This episode, we'll be back in the Pro Stock Rescue Garage with Scott and Woody as they continue the rear Morrison Camaro rebuild. We'll also talk with Mark Pappas, the founder of the Midwest Nostalgia Pro Stock Association. Scott and Woody will continue their talk with Wild Bill Neri at Bill's shop. And we'll be hearing from Nostalgia Pro Stocker Mike Ruth.
I've had an awful lot of fun and been very happy with what I've been able to achieve with the Nostalgic Pro Stock deal. You know, the car that's still near and dear to my heart is the 81 rear Morrison Camaro. I kind of got the idea after coming together with Scott, kind of a meeting of the minds, seeing the kind of step up production of the car sitting here in front of me. I always thought in the back of my mind, the next natural progression would be basically the last car that unfortunately Lee Shepard drove, which is the next generation Camaro, 82 to 85 in that era there. In my shop at home, I have a large frame picture of it. It's always been in the back of my mind. And seeing the craftsmanship and the one-up, I think it would be the next progression as this Nostalgic Pro Stock deal grows. Yeah, I'd love to do that and have my rear Morrison 81 cars running the Nostalgic program and hopefully someday chase Scott here and Tony and with Team Rear Morrison 3.0. Scott and Woody have always have been, whenever I needed some, our shops are 6 miles apart and they've been very helpful, and I know I'm under strict orders not to purchase anything without Woody signing off on it, so if he's going to help me, that's the least I could do. My initial thought is I'm glad the door is unlocked because, rumor has it not everybody gets in to see this thing, but this is a masterpiece. And while, again, I love the current car I have, and Scott and I have had many conversations about it, but, this is something, the next generation, a purpose-built, just for me, not a converted sportsman car or bracket car or, comp car. This is a, purpose-built Nostalgic Pro Stock car. Modern safety features, modern upgrades, performance features, and I don't know that I would ever have one on the same grand scale as this. I've been here watching him do tedious things, and some of the things, unfortunately on this car, some of the trickiest things on this car, I don't know if people will ever see. But I've been privy enough to be in the shop at times to see it. So I don't know if I'll get to that extent, but I am looking forward to having a lighter weight, performance-featured Nostalgic Pro Stock.
We had the NHRA tech over to take a look at the car. Their main interest was the driver's compartment. The 3/4 cage needs to go, and a full funny car cage needs to be installed. The original 3/4 roll cage and chassis structure is not sufficient for performance levels of today. It will not pass SFI 25-1E specifications. When reaching 6-second elapsed times in the quarter mile with a maximum weight of 2,800 pounds, the funny car cage adds extra protection to the driver and surrounds him with a protective network of tubing. We decided what tubes can remain and what needs to be added. The existing tubing was sonic tested for thickness. We decided to disassemble the car completely and evaluate everything thoroughly, to put a plan together on what we needed to do. We also planned to remove all the modifications that were added over the years that Don Hardy did not install when the car was originally built. Remove engine. Remove front end, radiator, and doors. Remove Power Glide automatic transmission. Remove the rear panel and trunk lid. Remove the wheel tubs and remaining aluminum. Now the rear end is ready for removal.
Well, what do you think we should do moving forward? We have a nice association now, Pro Stock Rescue and the Midwest Nostalgic Pro Stock Association. We've got a great group of cars, and if we use our heads, we can build this into a nice, big event where everybody benefits. We've got the 6-second cars, we've got the medium cars, which would be 750, 850 cars. We can even run 9-second cars in this group. We even have the guys with car show cars that want to bring them, and some of our original
just static displays.
And have them displayed. We have Bill Jenkins' original Vega. One of the guys has the original Motown Missile. Actually, there's 2 of them. Jenkins Vegas, I think, that are in this group.
Yeah.
And that'll be something great for the people to come, because those kind of cars, I don't think you want to race those anymore. They're just too valuable. And to change them, to put them up to the standards today, you would take away from what the car was. Just leave those alone and build something that's made to do this.
Exactly. See, that's what a lot of people don't understand about this class, is that, like I said, for instance, there was a Sox and Martin car at $750,000, and the guy neglected to let it go. I mean, there's just the history behind that car. We cannot take them kind of cars and turn them into race cars. So that's where the tribute cars come in. There's cars that are, Vegas Monzas and such like that are made to look like nostalgic pro stock cars of yesteryear, but they've been updated.
Right.
They've had some more tubing put in them. They've been, as again, safety is our top priority. We don't want nobody hurt. So, getting back to what you're saying is, there's a spot for everybody in this.
Right.
But what about the younger generation? See, we're missing out on that. We keep talking about us old kids.
No,
but what about you?
Okay, you keep talking about
I'm the
the old
kid
cars.
here.
And you're younger than me.
That's what
I'm
saying.
64.
I'm the kid here.
That's right, you're a baby, so I'm the one that's wanting
I don't
to
have
teach
my,
the babies,
card.
okay?
See, that's what's cool about this. It's like the old days where you could sit on the trailer
Right.
and reminisce about this stuff.
Today we're going to talk about the chassis in an NHRA Pro Stock car. This is made out of 4130 chrome moly tubing, and it has many components to keep it safety minded. Woody, why don't you talk about what's in here?
Okay, well, I think the most important area for us to talk about from the beginning would be the center of the car where the driver sits. It consists of two main rails that go from the 4-link mounts up to the very front of the car, and then there is a roll cage in the back. It has the front tubes going along the windshield and the roof tubes, but probably the most important part of the car is the funny car cage. Half of this particular cage is in right now. The front half is not in. It has to have a front section that goes over the driver's head ahead of his helmet, so that protects him more so in the event of a crash. After that, we've got some tubing that is down in the floor. We've got X's between the main rails. We've got a tube running along each rocker tube, and then we also have some diagonals to help support that area in the event of a collision.
We decided to completely rebuild the front end. So we cut the front end off at the firewall and reconstructed a complete new 4130 front end. The strut mounts had to be reconstructed for safety. Their original ones were a little undersized, and the frame rails were replaced, the lower control arm mounts were replaced, the motor plate tubes were replaced, and these strengtheners for the upper rails were replaced. Woody, is there some things that you'd like to comment on what was done in the front?
Well, the only thing that would be an additional to what you've already said is that we had a main rail that went to the front motor plate. We replaced it with a new one because the other ones were in such bad condition. It was a basic rebuild of a standard Pro Stock style front end that you see here. If you look at most of them today, basically they're in this shape and form. I think you've described what was involved, but that's the basic form of what everybody is looking at today.
We also installed the mid plate, which wasn't on cars of this era, but with the type of power that we'll have in this car, it was necessary. And that's the tubing that supports the aluminum motor plate. On the rear of the car, we decided to keep the rear frame rails only. We cut off the top frame rails and all the bracing. Woody, can you explain what we added and why we added it?
Well, basically, like you had said, we left this main lower rail in that goes almost clear to the tail of the car, and we added a little bit more to get back there so we would have sufficient parachute mounts and things of that nature. Then we built an entirely new substructure up here that's nice and wide, nice and stout, got plenty of diagonal control in there, and it will be the basis for us to hold the anti-roll bar, the shock mounts in the future, and any of the other little paraphernalia that is going to be back in the back of the car. Some of the forces that you have to consider when you're building a Pro Stock vehicle of this nature even going back to the tail of the car with the parachute mounts. When that parachute comes out, it hits with considerable G-force. You can ask any driver with loose shoulder harnesses, they knew when the parachute was released. So what you try to do is build a structure that is capable of spreading load out over the whole vehicle so no one tube takes the impact of the parachutes. Same thing applies to the four-link area of the car. It is doing all the driving of the car's entire weight down the track. So you try to spread that load over the whole vehicle, even into the roll cage, and let that drive the whole car down the track.
The engine's the heaviest part in the car, and when you think of the rear wheels trying to accelerate and you have that big weight sitting there, that motor has to be very well secured. So if you see in this, we have the aluminum motor plate, we have the chromoly structure around it that's all bolted in and tied to the frame. This way, when the car starts to accelerate, the engine's attached to the chassis, there's no flex, and it moves forward, and that's how we get the job done.
Yesterday we finished welding this up. It's all cooled down. We had built the lower control arm mounts and the upper strut mount. Next thing we're going to do is put on the strut and the lower control arm, put a wheel up here, see how everything is going to fit. So I think we're in good shape, but we have to test it. So if you hand me the strut, this basically is a Pro Stock Lamb strut, top of the line in the market. And it just goes up into a hole that's in here. Then it has a spacer and a nylon bushing. And you bolt her up like that. And the next thing we're ready for then is the control arm. Okay, now that we've got the strut installed, it's time to put on the lower control arm. It's two pieces. I'm going to go ahead and put the rear section on. It goes on this stud on the bottom of the strut. I'll put on the nut and the washer. And then I'll get a bolt from Scotty. These are all grade 8s, and install it.
I'm going to go ahead and install the front arm, and it also uses a grade 8 bolt. And that will do it. That is on and ready to check for tire clearance.
Okay, Scotty, now that we've got everything all bolted up, why don't we go ahead and get the front tire and get it on and check the tire clearances on the front, this wheel stand tube here. And then you can go over and work the rack and pinion for them. Okay, Scotty, if you want to turn the bowl to the right. Now, right now we are at full extension, so we have plenty of room. So we'll go ahead and raise the strut up and take a look-see. And we have plenty of room, even at full compression, which it'll never get to. So we're good to go on our front tire clearance.
Legendary Pro Stock battle! Right here on the starting line, this is what the Olympics is all about. How about the legend? Back in the day, both cars legendary. As we talk about the drivers and the machines that make this possible to run here tonight. Mark Pappas, the owner of both Pro Stock Machines, driving his Rear Morrison powered Chevrolet in the left lane, 500 cubic inches of Rear Morrison Pro Stock Monster. In the right lane, it's going to be Bob Cole taking the Grumpy's Toy 16 for a voyage here at Great Lakes Dragway down the track. This is more meaningful than anything you've ever watched here on this weekend. When you see two legends, and in the memory of one of the greatest innovators, engineers in the sport of drag racing, I would tell you that Grump is watching down from the skies tonight with a smile on his face.
I opened up a shop in 1980 in Southern California. I started out doing super stock cars. I had a World Championship super stock GTA car that set national records in both ET and mile an hour at one national events. It got a ton of attention. It was on the cover of Oldsmobile's calendar. Then from there I progressed into the tube chassis cars, and they did a car for the blown alcohol car for the LAPD. I did Randy Walker's El Camino that up until a few years ago was still competitive out in that series out west. So I was very fortunate to be surrounded by some really good people, and we made a dent out there for sure. Yeah, what Scott and Woody have put together, it's just, it's perfect. It's something that probably should have been done a long time ago. I mean, this is the golden years, in my opinion, of Pro Stock, you know, and everybody remembers those cars. Not to take anything away from the modern cars, but this was an era when a couple guys could get together, an engine builder, maybe a chassis guy, put a car together, and they're not going to win a world championship, but they'd be competitive at least. Nowadays you couldn't do that. Now it takes millions of dollars. It's a business. You know, we used to stay out, and we'd get done racing, and we'd stay out and go from, probably shouldn't be saying it, we'd go from bar to bar and have a great time and laugh. And I mean, it's, you know, now it's strictly business, and everybody's worried about, you know, getting the health food and trainers and all that, and it's just, it's a whole different deal. So I think what Scott's put together is huge, and I'm honored to be part of it.
Our goal at Pro Stock Rescue is to take the race fans back in time, watching this revived 1981 Rear Morrison Camaro that Lee Shepherd drove to many victories. Special thanks to Rear Morrison Racing Engines, Strange Engineering, Brill Battery, Quick Fuel Technology, Hoosier Racing Tire, Aurora Bearing Company, Brow Bell Housing, Lanco Racing Transmission, Flaming River, Billet Specialties, Jazz Products, TW Metals, Lamb Components, Moroso, Chassis Shop, Liberty's Gears, White Safety Equipment, Optic Armor, Precision Powder Coating. This is Al Tucci. Remember to enjoy every episode of Pro Stock Rescue.